All right, so now that you know a little bit about congruent figures, we can start talking about some shortcuts that you can use to prove that triangles are congruent. So if I gave you two figures in general and I asked you, are they congruent? What you would typically have to do is you'd have to prove that every single one of their corresponding sides or matching sides are the same length. And then you'd also have to go in and just make sure that all of their matching angles have the same degree measure. And so, you can do that with any other figure. However, the good thing about triangles is they actually have little shortcuts that you can use. So instead of having to prove that all three sides are equal to all three sides in the other triangle, or trying to prove that all three angles are the same measure, you really only have to check certain things, and if that's happening, then you can say the triangles are congruent, okay? So there's 5 little shortcuts that you'll be able to use to prove that triangles are congruent. So we're going to go through them, and I'm going to kind of show you some examples of what it would look like, and so hopefully that'll help. Okay, so the first shortcut to prove that triangles are congruent is called side, 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 and it's to help you to remember what to check. Okay, so to prove that triangles are congruent by side, 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 all of the corresponding sides have to be congruent. So all you have to look for is you're going to look at your two triangles. So I'm just going to draw 2 triangles on my board. And you have to look at the lengths of them. And if they are showing you in some way that the lengths in one triangle are the exact same as all of its matching lengths in the other one, then you can say they're equal. So how do they do that? There's a couple ways that they can show you that. So one way is to put like little tick marks on it. So if they, for instance, show you a little tick mark here, and then they put a tick mark on a length of a side here, that's actually showing you that this side has the same length as that side. Okay, so that's one side. But to prove that they're congruent by side, 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 they have to show you that all 3 of its matching sides are equal. Okay, so if they, for instance, show you that that one's equal to that one, that would be another side. So you have a side and another side. And then if they, for instance, show you that this one is equal to that one, so they're going to notice they put the same number of tick marks. If they put that, then that means that that last side, that length, would have the same length as that one. And so notice that's one side, that's the same, that's another side, and then that's the third side. So if they show you that all of the corresponding sides have the same length, then you could say that those 2 triangles are congruent. You wouldn't even have to look at their angles because you would already know that they're congruent, okay? So that's one way that they can show you. Another way, or another example they could give you, is let's say that I give you a triangle that looks like that, and then another triangle that looks like that. They could actually give you the lengths of the triangles. So let's say that this one has a length of like 2 centimeters. That one has a length of 2 centimeters. This one has a length of, 4 centimeters. And then that has a length of 5 centimeters. And then over here, this one has a length of 5 centimeters, and then this one has a length of 4 centimeters. Well, notice this side and that side have the same length. This side and that side, so that's another side that has the same length. And then this side right here and that side and that other triangle have the same length. So all 3 sides in this one are equal in length to all of its matching sides in this one. So that would mean that these 2 would be congruent also by side, side, side. So you would say, yes, they are congruent, and then you would tell me why you know that. And that would be the reason why you know they're congruent, okay? So that's side, side, side. So now, another way, so what if they don't give you the lengths of the sides? Well, there's other things that you could check. So side angle side is something else you could check. So let's say they were giving you 2 of the sides and an angle. Well, it could potentially be congruent, but you're going to realize that the order of this matters, okay? So to prove that they're congruent by what's called side angle side, notice where the angle is, it's in the middle, you have to show that 2 of its corresponding sides are equal in length. And you have to show that the angle that's in between those sides is equal in measure, okay? So with this one, so let me erase. With this one, you're looking for if they're showing you that two sides are equal and the angle in between. So like something like this would be, let's say that I give you a triangle that looks something like this, and then another triangle that looks something like that. If they tell you, so I'm going to give you some information here. Let's say that that is a 90-degree angle. Let's say that this one has a length of 3 inches, and then that side has a length of 8 inches. And then over here, they tell you that this side has a length of 3 inches, that has a length of 8 inches, and then they give you that this angle is 90 degrees. How would you know if these are congruent or not? Well, notice they're not giving you all 3 sides, so you're not going to be able to do the side, side, side because they don't give you enough information for that. If they gave you that other side, then you'd be able to tell me if they're congruent or not, but they don't give you that. So what they are giving you is 2 lengths of the sides and then an angle. And so what you would look is, can I prove them congruent by this? Well, that angle has to be in between those 2 sides. The angle that they're showing you is congruent has to be in between the 2 sides. So that's what you're checking for here. So notice this is one of my sides. So that one's one of my sides. That's the other one. And it kind of matches up with this side, matches up with that one. And then this side matches up with that one. But that angle has to be in between those 2 sides in both of them. So the way that I check that is, sometimes, like if you take your fingers and you kind of put them on the sides that are congruent, that angle has to be the one that's kind of in the crease of your fingers there. And notice that angle is between those 2 sides. It's at the corner of those 2 sides where they meet. So that one's in between here, but it also has to be in between in the other one. So look at the 2 sides. Is that angle in between those 2 sides? Is it in the crease of those 2 sides? And notice it is. So this has a side, an angle, and a side that's congruent to a side, an angle, and a side in the other one. So these 2 would be congruent by side, angle, side. Okay, so you have to check for specifically what it's saying. So like this one, you're going to check to see if all 3 sides are congruent. And if they are, then you can say they're congruent by side, side, side. This one, you have to check to see if it has 2 sides and the angle in between congruent. Okay, so that's that one. So then think about what you would have to check for this one. Angle, side, angle. It has to have 2 matching angles equal, and then the side, notice that side is in between them, so the order does matter here. So that side that's in between them has to be congruent. So let me show you an example of that. So let me erase this one. So to show that angles are the same, you put the little arches in them, okay? So I'm going to draw 2 random triangles here. I'm trying to give you a variety here, all right? So how would I prove that 2 triangles are congruent by that? Well, they have to give you 2 angles, and then the side that's between the angles has to be congruent. So if I tell you that that angle is equal to that angle, that's 1 angle in each that's congruent. If I tell you that this angle is equal to that one, so they have the same measure, that's 2 angles. So now which side would they have to show me is congruent in order to say that they're congruent? Okay, well, it has to be the side that's between those 2 angles. So you can kind of use the same method that I used before. If I put my fingers on these 2 angles, the side that's kind of in between my fingers is the side that's between the angles, okay? So they would have to show you that that side is equal to the side that's between these. So notice the side that's between these would be that one. So if they showed you that and they said, okay, this angle and that angle are equal, those 2, and then the side in between are equal, you would say that they're congruent by, or the triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. But I'm going to show you something. If they, for instance, do something like this, those 2 triangles you cannot say are congruent because it's got an angle and a side, but notice in this one, that side is not between the angles. So you would not be able to say that they're congruent because it's not fitting what it's saying. You have to have two angles and the side in between them, okay? So just look out for that, because you will see problems where they kind of try to mess with you in that way, all right? So that's an example of angle, side, angle, okay? So now, what about this next one? Well, you have to have two corresponding angles, and then you have to just have a matching side. So this side has to still be corresponding within each triangle, but that side that they're showing you is congruent is actually not going to be between them this time, okay? So let's talk about what that would look like. So I'm going to do kind of a different little example here, since we haven't done one of these yet. So let's say that they give you a picture like that. So notice your two triangles. You've got one down here, you've got one down here, okay? They just happen to be formed by things that cross. And let's say that they tell you that this angle is equal to that one. So notice it's almost like it's been like flipped and flipped again. And then they tell you that this side is equal to that side. So these have the same length if you measure them, that side, and then this angle has the same measure as that one. And then that's all they give you, okay? Well, to show that they are congruent by angle, side, or excuse me, angle, angle, side, you have to have two angles and a side. So think about what you have right now. We have this angle, so that's one angle, and then we have a side, but we don't have another angle. If you think about what we talked about before, you actually do. When you have two lines crossing, you have vertical angles. So like this angle and that angle are vertical angles, and think about vertical angles have the same measure. So this angle would actually be the same as that one, okay? So notice you have two angles congruent to two other angles, and then you have a side. Look at how the angles and the sides relate. You got two angles. That side is actually not between those angles. So this could potentially be this. I could say maybe that they're congruent by angle, angle, side. So, well, how do you know that? Well, you've got the two angles. Is that side corresponding? And the way that I know that is if you kind of look, this side right here is between the one that has little one arch and then the angle that doesn't have an arch at all. So does it correspond with this one? Well, notice this side is between the one that has an arch and doesn't have one. So those are corresponding sides, okay? So you've got two angles in one and a side, two angles in one and its matching side that are congruent. That is this right here. So you could actually say that these two are congruent by angle, angle, side, okay? So the last one is HL, and it's kind of different than the rest of them. So like a way that I remember these is if you look at the letters, there's like a word that kind of comes to mind when you see those letters. Notice we don't spell that word, okay? So if you ever spell that word with what the information that they're giving you, just know that's not actually going to work to prove that they're congruent, okay? So that's how I remember these. The HL, I actually remember it as RHL, and there's a reason for that because of what you check. So to prove that two triangles are congruent by RHL, what you have to do is you have to check they have to both be right triangles. So they both have to have, let me redraw that. They both have to have a right angle in them. So they have to have something that tells you there's a right angle in each. So I'm going to draw my two triangles here. So that's one thing they have to have. The other things that they have to be able to tell that they're congruent, just using a shortcut, a shorter way of saying that they're equal or congruent, is they have to somehow show you that the hypotenuse is congruent in both of them. So remember, the hypotenuse is that longest side, or the one that's opposite of that 90-degree angle. So they can put a length here, and if they have the same length here, then that would mean they're congruent. Or, like I've been doing, you could put the little tick marks. So the hypotenuses have to be congruent. And then one of their legs has to be congruent. So if, for instance, I show you that this is the same length as that one, then you have right triangles, you have the hypotenuse equal in both of them, and then you have a leg in both of them. So if you have that, then you could say that they are congruent by what's called HL, okay? So this shows you what to check to know if your two triangles are congruent, okay? So it's just shorter ways of saying, hey, are they the same triangle or not, okay? So there you go. Hopefully that helps.